Good evening, welcome back. It's Friday Football Focus. Oh, I've missed this, Tony. I've missed seeing your face. It's good to have you back. Did you make any New Year's resolutions?
Usual things. Don't eat as much as I normally do and try and get myself fitter. But
I can tell all the listeners that's gone down the pan on day one, I think.
It's collapsed.
No, you're looking well. It's good to have you back. And the first weekend of 2018 is the Friends Provident International FA Cup preliminary round. A lot of games scheduled to go ahead, but the pitches aren't looking too great.
No, they're not looking too good. And I know certainly ours at Ballafletcher, it's probably the wettest it's been for a long time. And I'm just glad that both teams, first team and combination, are away on artificial surfaces this week. But when you look down at some of the grounds that are hosting the prelim round of the Friends Provident International FA Cup tomorrow, it is a bit of a worry. And I know since we've come on air, or since I've come into the studio, that we've had a couple of changes around. And Foxdale against Braddon, we've just got news through that one's been postponed. They were hoping to hold that at the Bowl, but it's one of those last minute decision to play it there, and staff are already booked in, and it's trying to find someone who'll give up their Saturday evening to come down and look after things. So unfortunately that's gone. Douglas Athletic against Douglas High School Old Boys. Athletics pitch has been struggling, so a bit of work to do on that one. Governors Athletic Corinthian should be okay. Gyms over recent weeks have also had problems because they're down at that water table, aren't they, down by the river. Malou against Castletown, that was switched this afternoon, and we'll furnish the information to the clubs later on, but that's been moved to Castletown, which is good to see. Moran against St Mary's, Moran's pitch is a bit iffy at the moment. Onken against St George's, that's already been moved as well. That's been moved to Colby, 1:30 kickoff. Then you've got the big one of the day, which is Peel against Rushen. I think Peel's pitch has proved its worth throughout this winter so far, since being seeded, when you think of it, just in April, and to be able to get through the weather conditions that are being thrown at us at the moment, then incredible job's been done there. St John's against D&D. St John's has been a little bit sticky, so hopefully that'll sort itself out tonight with the wind, and Union Mills as well must be doubtful. So there's a lot of ifs in there on those cup games for tomorrow afternoon.
And it must be incredibly frustrating, not only for the players, not only for the managers and the coaches as well, but the people drawing up the fixtures, because when you've got a backlog, it's extra work, and you've got to try and find time to fit these games in. And with island matches taking place, with knockout football like the FA Cup, like the Railway Cup, which didn't take place on Boxing Day as per usual, it makes things rather difficult.
Yeah, they're stacking up now, Chris, and I haven't totaled them up since just before Christmas. I had a look and it was over 100, and since then we've lost a few games on the 23rd, lost a few games on the 30th, well, a lot of games on the 30th, so it is stacking up. And the problem is with it, the Railway Cup, when you look back at some of the clubs, Geordie's, Rushen, Douglas High School Old Boys, they've all got quite a considerable amount of games to play before we even get near to the semi-finals. So there's a lot of to and fro to do with the fixtures. We've got the Island game, which is down to be played before the 10th of February, but they still haven't found out who their opponents are going to be. And we've got the Junior Island game coming up on the 20th of January, which again will give us more postponements. And with the Cup, and I know a question that I've been asked quite a few times is, if the Cup games are postponed this week, will they go ahead next week? Not necessarily. We try and have a look to see if there's possibly an opportunity where the two clubs were going to meet in the league, that we can put it on that date. Instead of cancelling games next week, put the cup games on, and then some clubs who aren't in the cup competitions sort of lose a game of football, which is what we don't like. So yeah, there's quite a bit of work to try and sort it out.
I think frustrating is the buzzword. Let's focus on the main match. I think you would say, I think anybody looking at the fixtures as a neutral would agree, and those especially involved in it, is the Manx Old Firm Peel against Rushen. A juicy encounter for a preliminary round of an FA Cup.
Well, it's mega, and if I remember rightly, it was the first one out of the bag when Richard Foden from Sponsors Friend Provident made the draw, and when it came out you just thought, wow, one of the big teams is going to go. And when you look at current form, you'd have to go for Peel to possibly win this one, because Rushen had that blip where they were beaten 4-0, and that was a surprise after some really good results and performances, and they've got to try and find something where they can sort of break down Peel, because Steve Faulkner's got the boys playing really well there at the moment. Tom Wood at the back, since he's partnered Dominic McCreevy, they've looked a real solid unit. He's tweaked with the fullback positions as well, which has helped things. And goalkeeper Owen Dawson has come back in, and Owen's really good. But it's going forward where they worry the life out of you at the moment, because Lee Gale's in really good form. Daniel Bell in midfield is playing some terrific football. And then when you look at other ones like Matthew Skillicorn, Johnny Shields, who've been brought in, are fitting into those positions. Christian Penswick's another, really well. But Russia are a good side as well. And this is a great game in prospect. And let's just hope it lives up to the billing it's getting by everyone, and makes out for a good game. And I don't mind the extra time neither. And penalty shootout I'm not too fussed on. But if we have to go down that route, we'll go down that one as well, Chris.
I mean, most people would say that Peel are strong favourites, just because they've been going quite well in the league. They've got home advantage. That's a big boost for them. You tend not to see as many upsets in the Isle of Man FA Cup as you do in the FA Cup across. With the incentive of winning silverware, surely Peel will be right up for this one.
Well, I think so, and I think Peel, the way it's gone with Geordies in the league, with sort of the results that they've had of late as well, you just think to yourself, well, what's sort of happening there in the football, because with Geordies, there's players there who has been struggling with injury. Callum Morrissey has been one, Johnny Myers two, but the younger lads that have come in have done really well, and I just feel at the moment that it's wide open. Corinthians, Old Boys, Russian, Peel, have all got a great opportunity, and I think Peel used to rely on silverware from the cups. I think sort of league-wise this year at the moment, I would say the Peel faithful are looking at it and saying, well, we've got a good opportunity here, because when they got beat by Geordies, you just thought to yourself, well, that's it, gone. But then suddenly Geordies lost the two games, then or drew one, and lost one. You just thought to yourself then that there's an opportunity here for them to get back into it.
Is this the one trophy after the league that everybody wants to win?
Definitely. The FA Cup. I think the Railway Cup is nice, because that it's the four top sides at the halfway stage, and I think it's the time of year it's played. It's played at Boxing Day. We've tried a different date, and we've gone back to the Boxing Day, and it seems to fit in well with people wanting to go and watch it. But the Hospital Cup, it's one of those, isn't it? It's the end of the season. It's a night or it was a night competition. This time it's being moved, the Hospital Cup, to the Saturday, right the way through the whole competition. So it's something different that we've tried out. But I think at the moment everybody fancies the chances out of those top five sides. And even you've got to include St John's in that, because they showed against St George's. Unfortunately, they couldn't hang in there. To be up like they were and then collapse in the last sort of 10-15 minutes. They were looking really good for a win in that game.
Let's talk about St George's, the holders. They're away at Onken, but they're not at Onken, are they? They're at Colby. So is that going to provide a spanner in the works?
Maybe. I think Onken Stadium, again, I was there a few weeks ago and I watched the game against Paul Rose, and the pitch was a little bit wet, and I think it needs to dry out. It needs some good weather. So there's no point in cutting it up, as where Dickie Gale and everyone else down at Colby do a great job in maintaining those pitches, and they're always happy to help clubs out as well, and that's what they've done here. Onken have been helped out during the Christmas period to allow them to have a game of football there, and against St George's I think it's really good. And I think there's a little bit of a touch on this game as well. Heidi Ringham, who unfortunately passed away recently, Julian plays for Geordies, and Tristan is involved with Onken, so it's really nice. And I believe Q-Plus have bought a kit for Onken, which is really nice. I've seen it, and it's a nice touch, and they want to get the game played. And down at Colby, that's one thing you always looked after down there, cup of tea or whatever you want, they'll cater for you well. And let's just help. It's a good day, and I think there's a collection for charity, which is really nice. And I think St George's stand out as clear favourites in it, but Onken will have a go, and that's what it's all about, this FA Cup, is to see where you are. Certainly the teams towards the top of Division 2, to see where they are against, if they get the chance of a fixture against one of the sides towards the bottom in the Premier League.
And a special day in memory of a special person for the families involved and all that knew Heidi.
Yeah.
And who knows, a special result for Onchan. It could happen. The magic of the cup, is it still there, Tony?
I don't think it's there as much as like in England, as you were saying before. 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said yes, but I think the gulf now between the Premier League and Division 2 is quite big, and I'll be surprised if certainly in the top 6, top 8 teams in the Premier League, even if they're playing against one of the sides near the top of Division 2, I don't see the Division 2 side winning, because I've watched Pulrose this year, I've watched Castletown this year. They're 2 of the top sides, and I still feel that there's quite a big difference if they're going to be promoted sides to try and establish themselves in the Premier League.
It's a big ask. Let's move to Springfield Road, Douglas Athletic against Old Boys. Douglas Athletic, a slow start to the league season, but as you pointed out, they had some very, very tough games. Old Boys, always a strong side. So which way do you see this one going? I'm
going to go for Old Boys. I think Old Boys, up until November, they were absolutely flying. I know they've missed quite a few games of late, but they beat Corinthians, who were league leaders, and they put in some really good performances. And I know their training has been good. They've got 1 or 2 players back in. The 2 Stewart boys are back from Australia, and that makes them stronger. They've got a great goalkeeper in Sam Halliday. You've got people in there like Martin King at the back who keeps things, everything together. Ian Ramsey, and I've watched them a couple of times this year, Old Boys, and they're a side that I think, if they could get that momentum going, then they could get involved as well. But I think the points that they've dropped at the start in the league has probably hampered them a bit. But they'll be looking for a good cup run, and against Douglas Athletic, tough game on a tight pitch. And it'll be an awkward pitch if it goes ahead tomorrow, but you'd expect Old Boys to win that.
And is a cup run for Douglas Athletic, in a way, really not what they want? It's a bit of a distraction from their league form, or do you think now they've got, as you say, a lot of the tough games out of the way, they've got some points on the board, there's a bit of a gap between them and the sides directly below them, so maybe a chance for them to enjoy a cup run, or do you think it is a distraction from the league which they need to focus on?
No, I don't think they need to concentrate on the league, because they had a horrendous start to the season. I think it was 6 or 7 of the top sides, and then they've got those again on the turnaround, and most of them are out of the way now. I know they've lost a few, that'll go down as rearranged fixtures, but the games that you would expect them to get involved and pick the points up are coming up, and I think Brian Gartland's done a good job with sort of not necessarily limited resources, but sometimes his best players haven't been available, and that's sort of affected them a little bit. But I think Douglas Athletic are one of those sides that have got back into the Premier League or got into the Premier League and look quite comfortable. They had a great season last year, and this year it's been a little bit harder, but I still think they're good enough to cause an upset against some of the top sides, and they've done that already.
Corinthians travel to Governors Athletic. They put on a real show at the unveiling of their new stand recently. They seem to be in good form, good spirits. When you speak to, I went along to speak to Andy Thornton. They seem like they're a good group, tight-knit group, and in good spirits going forward, which can only benefit them when they go on to the pitch and the whistle's blown and they're there preparing for a game. 100%,
totally agree, and it's one of those with Corinthians. It's a very, very young team, and people keep saying to me, do you think Corinthians can win the league? The young players are good enough, but there's some really good sides in there now. When you compare it to last year, Peel are stronger, Russian are stronger, Old Boys are stronger, Corinthians are stronger, but they're very, very young. When you look at sort of who they've got to play, they've got Peel to play, they've got St George's to play twice, they've got Russian to play twice, so it's all on them to see if they could win the league, which is a nice way to be. They're not looking at other people to lose games to get themselves back in it, and I think against Governors Athletic it should be a comfortable victory for Corinthians. Yes, they did turn on the style against Ramsey. They're very fit. Danny McMahon, Ben Qualtrough, Julian Watney have done a great job there to develop these younger players, because they are I don't want to say kids because that's cruel, but their average age is I think 22, 23, which is marvellous to be in that position. And they finished second last year, so it shows that the quality's there. But now it becomes hard. When you look at it this year, they've lost to Douglas High School Old Boys, which, lost to Peel in a narrow defeat at the Bowl, which I thought they did really well in the first half, and the second half didn't quite happen for them. But Governors Athletic is a team that they should be able to beat, and that game will be going ahead tomorrow because it's on Astro, so hopefully they make a good day of it.
Does that make a difference at all, the fact that it's an artificial surface, or is it really nothing to worry about for either team? Governors will be used to it.
Governors are used to it. Corinthians train on it twice a week, so Corinthians know how the surface plays. It doesn't play like the Bowl. It's totally different playing surface. The pitch is certainly narrower. I don't know about lengthwise. So, but Corinthians, the footwork is good. They're sharp. They pass it quick. And Sean Doyle's been in great form. So, no, I don't think that'll cause any problems for Corinthians to play on that surface.
I take it you will be at the Old Firm Peel against Russian tomorrow?
Yeah, that's the plan, to go down there and cover that one. But we'll wait and see what the weather's like tonight, see what it throws at us. And hopefully it's nice to us. The wind, we want the wind, let it dry out and then just stop before kick-off tomorrow. That'll help us nicely.
As I say, approaching 22 minutes past 6 here on Friday Football Focus. If you're just joining us, I can tell you that Foxdale against Braddon in the Friends Provident International FA Cup tomorrow has already been postponed. Malou against Castletown has been switched to the away side's pitch, and St George's match at Onken has also been moved to Colby. There are some second division or all second division ties tomorrow. Jim's against Michael. How do you see that one going?
It's hard to say because Jim's started off really badly and then got it together. They started scoring a few goals. Tony Sewell seems to have got the boys organised now to play how he wants them to play. So I think this is a strong possibility here for Jim's. They're sort of around each other in the league.
Well, a point separates them, and they're both, I think, 11th and 12th in the league. They are respectively Jim's and Michael. This can provide a bit of a boost for their league chances if they could get a win tomorrow, Michael. Be a huge boost. Well,
it is, and Michael are another team that they've got sort of Nick Hurt is there when he's available, and the rest of the players there have been able to get out every week, which is important. But it's the FA Cup, and I'm sure both sides would love to beat each other and then see if they could get one of the big boys. Because at the end of the day, I think, to be fair, Jim's and Michael know that it's going to be really tough for them to reach the final. So, why play a Division 2 side when they play them twice during the year anyway? Why not have one of the Premiership sides and just see how you get on? And, let's wait and see how this goes tomorrow when both teams meet.
Is there a chance Moran could Mark Hughes it when they go up against St Mary's tomorrow?
So
just to clarify, when I say Mark Hughes it, for any Stoke fans, I don't mean to cause offence, but there was a bit of a stir in the media when he seemed to rest a few players for a match recently.
Yes. St Mary's won't rest any. When you look over the cup competitions over recent years, St Mary's are always there or thereabouts. And I watched them against St John's recently, and they played really well. They've got sort of a couple of young fellas in there. Good to see Matthew Rennie back, which is good. Sam Gelling's back in the team as well. Jordan Cooper was suspended, so he didn't play. But Stevie Priestnell on that day, his second goal was magnificent. And when you've got players who can finish from nothing really, then you're always in with a chance. And Stephen Priestnell's that type of player. You got Alex Allison and Carl Clark at the back, who are the main hub to keep it all together. And then Kirill Valev seems to be playing well at the moment in goal. He was a little bit of a busy boy against St John's in the end, but a couple of his saves, one of them absolutely fantastic, the left-hander, and I would think St Mary's can win it. But this is one of those. Moran are still in the mix. If you look at the league table, I think they're, fifth or sixth, but when you look at their points, they're in with a chance if there's a bit of a collapse in there. So they'd like to be able to just see how they do against one of the sides that have struggled a little bit. They're not going to be relegated, but struggled a little bit to find consistent form in the Premier League.
Malou were supposed to be at home to Castletown tomorrow. That's now been moved to the Southerners pitch. And Castletown, they don't need any more of an advantage really. They're flying at the moment in JCK Limited Division 2. You'd expect them to go and win that now that it's on home turf.
They are flying, but you've got to be careful with Malou, because going forward, They score plenty of goals, as we saw recently against Moran. And Dale Walker, it's his first year there from Pulrose, and Crackner is really good. And Dean Kinley as well is a special player for them. So there's goals there, and Castletown know that, because I watched the Maloo Castletown league game earlier on in the season, and I thought, Maloo did really well. Castletown have know what's coming, and they've just got to keep things tight at the back defensively. Richard Foden will probably be a big part of that one, and I think Gary Sansby's quite happy with the way things have gone for Castletown. They seem to settle the nerves, the mid-season first half nerves, and now are on banging form, and I know he's looking forward to this game tomorrow, because they've got some big league games coming up as well. So it's all a bit of pressure at the moment for the Castletown players to deal with, and certainly tomorrow against Maloo it's not going to be easy, but I do expect them to go through.
And Castletown have lost more at home in the league this season than away, if that provides any crumb of comfort for Maloo. St John's against Douglas and District. I can't myself see this going any other way than St John's, but maybe Tony can provide some hope for the away side tomorrow.
Well, I'm always wary of Douglas and District, and Rick Delaney knows that, because they do throw a big one up now and then. And I'm not saying that with St John's, because I don't know if Anthony Moore is still here. Alex Holden played really well against St Mary's. So if he's here, and I know they've got one or two players I think are back now. Andrew Chadwick's one-match suspension will be finished. Sam Ingham's one-match suspension will be done and dusted. Damien Petkoff pulled off a couple of great saves against St Mary's. So I'd expect St John's to win that one again. They showed true character against St Mary's. They were trailing big time, and then they got 2 goals towards the end that put the pressure on St Mary's. So I have to go for St John's in that game.
And the final game to cover in the FA Cup of this weekend's fixtures, Union Mills at home to Pulrose. Pulrose favourites, they're second in JCK Limited Division 2. They've got 2 games in hand on leaders Castletown, only 3 points behind. Can they take that form into the Cup? I
think they can, and I know speaking to Paul Guyver last week when their game was cancelled, he was disappointed, because when you're in the flow and when you're scoring plenty and playing well like they were, then you want to keep it going. But unfortunately, due to the weather, it didn't happen. But Union Mills, again, are a side that they concede a lot, but they can score a lot of goals as well. So Pulrose have got to be careful with that one. But I think it's remarkable where Pulley are in the league. At the start of the season, there was players leaving. Dale Walker went and 1 or 2 others went. And he managed to sort of cover the cracks, if you like, got the younger players in. And Steve Glover was the signing for them. And with him there in front of goal, and could be the big difference that Pulrose will go into the hat.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, Tony, and be careful what you say here, because I'll be passing your answer on to Ed Oldham. He'll determine whether you're right or wrong tomorrow. How many of these FA Cup ties do you think will go to extra time?
2 extra time. Oh, that's a tough one. Maybe 1. I'm going to go for Peel and Rush, and I just think that is too tight to call. And if both teams play like they can, then I think that could go all the way. And the Peel crowd are always there, support the game well. Great atmosphere, so I'll go for 1.
Well, I'd advise you to take your big coat with you then, Tony, because it could be a long old afternoon. The closing stages of the Women's League Floodlit Cup, the final matches, final round of fixtures, on Sunday. How do you think that's fared this season?
I think it's been good. We lost one of the teams, which was unfortunate, but I think we've got 2 games on Sunday. Which I think it's near enough done and dusted, but just mathematically to make sure it's right. And then we've got the other game next week, which is Group A, Group B. I think the teams you expect are in there: Douglas Royal, Corinthians, Peel, and then there's a little battle for the other one. So we'll have a good picture of where that one's going on Sunday by 5 o'clock, and then the last single game will be the Sunday after. And then we're going to hopefully, if you'll allow us in, Chris, to do the draw on Monday evening, because the semi-finals are the following Sunday, and we like to keep the draws live for Manx Radio, so we'll try and sort that one out. But no, I think it's going according to plan. But Corinthians have had the sort of edge ahead of Peel and Douglas Royal in the league, and see if they can do that in the Floodlit as well.
What's the state of women's football like in the Isle of Man? It's growing in stature, it seems, all the time. Is it growing as much as the profile of the women's game across?
It's hard to say because we lost a team this year, which didn't help. But I think quality-wise, it is really good. But the big problem is, I think that all teams see, is the girls go to university, when they're 18. But, coming through the junior teams, the development centre, some absolutely flying. And when you look at Tia Lisi, who's with Manchester United, you've got Ella Dixon, who's with Everton. It's major. And when you look at Elizabeth Stanley, she was at Arsenal. There's some absolutely tremendous individuals coming through, but it's that sort of breakthrough, isn't it, into the big game. I think, you've got to be so lucky, but fair play to Tia and Ella. Absolutely fantastic. And I know Tia's being sort of chased down as well to see if they can, get her involved in possibly a county somewhere along the line. So we'll wait and see, but fair credit to both of them. They're doing really well.
I'm trusting that was just a cough and that Tony Mepham hasn't come down with Australian flu. Tony, it's been a pleasure seeing you for the first time in 2018, always is, and we'll hear from you tomorrow in Saturday Sport. All the way through from 12:30 tomorrow. A final reminder of the fixtures in the FA Cup. Douglas Athletic against Old Boys, Foxdale against Braddon. That has already been called off, so don't bother going to that one. It's not going to take place tomorrow. Corinthians travel to Governors Athletic. Jim's at home to Michael. And Malou against Castletown has been switched to Castletown's pitch. Moran against St Mary's. St George's travel to Colby for their match with Onken. It's an Old Firm, Peel against Russian, which Tony Mepham will be covering for Manx Radio. Douglas and District travel to St John's, and Union Mills entertain Pulrose. And just before we go, we've got about 10 seconds. You're an Arsenal fan, aren't you, Tony?
I am, and you're a Forest fan.
Yes, and we meet in the FA Cup on Sunday. And I reckon it's going to be 4-0 to the mighty Reds. You work out which ones. Good evening.